Okay, so let me ask you something. Have you ever set a goal and you find yourself like your heart was beating like really fast, you were already really excited about it, and you imagine this future version of yourself like so clearly, you could almost like touch her. And then a few months later, life happens, the roads got a little bit bumpy, and suddenly the vision has felt like very far away, and you thought maybe I can't do this. Maybe the dream is too big. Well, let me tell you, that's the exact moment your future self is watching, and she's asking, are you going to let a little turbulence make you turn the plane around, or are you going to hold the vision and keep flying? So today I'm going to show you exactly how to hold on to that vision, even when everything in you wants to quit. And trust me, I've been there like many, many times. Hey, welcome to Wow Words of Wisdom. This is the podcast where we talk about all things mindset, all things confidence, and taking action, even when it feels scary. I'm Sharon McCaffrey, and if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. Your mindset shapes everything. The way you think, the way you show up, the way you go after what you really want, and it all starts in your head. So if you've ever felt stuck, doubted yourself, or wondered if you're really capable of more, you're in the right place. Each week, let's break through those mental blocks, shift your perspective, and start making things happen. So the first thing that I want to discuss is why does the vision slip, when the road gets bumpy? Because when you start out, you're so excited and stuff. And when we start out of that vision, we're on this high. It's like being in a new relationship. It's all butterflies, and it's all excitement. And at the beginning of a goal, you've got a vision that feels like all shiny and new, and it's full of promise. And what's happening is your brain is releasing dopamine, every time you think about it. And that's the honeymoon phase. But then what happens is the dip, I call it that valley of despair. I suppose it's the space between, starting and becoming the master of it. It's like where the work feels harder than the reward, when you're in this dip, like motivation, this is where it really, starts to fade. And it's not because the goal is wrong. It's just because reality has kicked in. And I've done a podcast before, like on the emotional cycle of change. And not too sure which number it is, but you can go back and revisit that, and that'll take you through that whole emotional cycle of change. But here's what's actually, psychologically what's going on. Your survival brain wants comfort. The challenges are triggering the amygdala. It's almost like the amygdala starts whispering, pull back, this is too much. And it's because, as I said, your brain, wants this comfort. And then the stress then narrows your focus. So instead of seeing possibilities, you just fixate on what's going wrong. Remember, motivation is a feeling, it's not a strategy, and feelings change daily. So you can't build a vision on something that fluctuates that much. And for me, I've lived this over and over, when I left my marriage, when I was in debt, when I was building a business, everyone thought, all these things was a terrible idea. And there were so many points, I could have said, you know what, this is just too much. And there were times where I really, really felt like that. I think then when you have other people, saying to you that you're crazy or it is too much, you start believing that. And, I remember people saying to me like, oh, why can't you just get a normal job? And, why, my mom was often saying, why can't you just be normal? And I think when you're in those bumpy moments, that's when you most feel like listening to that. But looking back, if I'd listened in those bumpy moments, none of the life I have now would actually exist. So, what is the power of holding the vision? For me, my vision is my North Star. The North Star is the star that guides people and that guides people home. And so that's why I call it the North Star, because I feel like, my vision is guiding me where I want to go. And I think sometimes the mistake people make is wherever you are now, then you're trying to, oh, my vision is just the next few weeks or whatever's the next step ahead. But why not have the vision at the top, and then everything else then trickles down from that, all your decisions and stuff trickle down from that. And you need something like that is going to guide you, because when it does get stormy and you can't see land, you need something that you believe in, because without it, what's going to happen is you're actually going to drift. with it, you've got a point of reference, even when the seas are rough. There's a few ways that I keep my vision alive. The first one is like mind movies, right? And this is like, what I've done is I've taken a load of different pictures just online of things that like what I want my future to look like. I've attached them all then like in a video to music. And so I have them then just in the album in my phone, and I typically play it every day, and it's only like a minute long. So it is, but it's just a reminder for me of what it is that I'm looking to achieve. What happens then is that because I'm looking at it on a regular basis, like I see it, I hear it, but then what's more important is then that I feel it. And I do this so often, I could almost tell you what picture is coming after what in the mind movie. The other thing, and I've talked about it before, is vision boards. Like, I believe these turn like the intangible into the tangible. They're not magic, but they are a constant reminder to your subconscious of where you're headed. And your subconscious is so much more powerful than you realize. And then the other one, which I ran a podcast on a few weeks ago, was decision boards. And for me, that is the next level. It's not just what you want, it's the daily decisions you're committed to making that align with that vision, because vision without aligned action is just like really daydreaming. And then there's the opposite action, that the art of doing the thing you least feel like doing when your feelings are trying to pull you backwards. So if I feel like hiding under a blanket instead of going to the gym, that's my signal to go. If I feel like, there have been days where I felt like not going into work, but in my head I'm going, those are the days that you really need to be there and be present. If I feel like there's something in work that I feel like ignoring, maybe that's sales targets, maybe for the week, like that's my cue to push harder and to focus on that. So then the next part is that it's the emotional regulation for the resilience. And this is something I've been through, because this week, like, there were some things going on in work where I was like, and it's so funny because I was just saying this morning that I felt that my energy like was lower. And this week somebody suggested it might be something to do with the moon. I don't know. So I've kind of actually been going through a lot of that this week. So I feel like I'm in a good place to talk about like that emotional regulation for the resilience, because remember, resilience is emotional before it's practical. So if you can't regulate your emotions, you'll talk yourself out of taking the actions will get the results. So my go-to practices, there's a few things that I do. First one is breath work. It slows like the heart rate right down. It tells the body, you're safe. It opens up your thinking space. So I've done a lot of that. And I'm not sitting there like for hours on end, like doing deep breathing and stuff like that. Like even on the train on the way home, like, yesterday I was just sitting there and I just closed my eyes. I put on some meditation on YouTube, and I just done like a little bit of like, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, out for 4. I done some breathing last night when I had my like red light mask on, and that was breathing in for 4, out for 7, because that like calms you down. And the other thing I've been doing is like grounding. So, this morning, first thing, like I was out on the grass, like grounding myself. It was the first thing I done when I got home yesterday evening, because bare feet, whether it's on grass or sand, you're connecting with nature and you're resetting your nervous system. So it's almost like a detox of all the bad energy out of your body. The other thing then is movement. I double down on gym and exercise when I feel I need to emotionally regulate. So whether that's lifting weights, whether it's Pilates, whether it's, a walk, but moving your body changes your emotional state quite fast. So just even in the last 24 hours, I'm not suggesting anyone has to do this, but like, as I said, I doubled down the good stuff. Like when I got home yesterday evening, I went for a walk, I went to the gym this morning. I'm going to Pilates tomorrow because I know I need to double down on that stuff. And then the other thing then is like what I call high quality inputs. Like, what are you reading? What are you listening to? So when I'm going through that emotional period, I will read and listen to things that are going to fuel my vision. So I'm not sitting watching trash TV when I'm, trying to be in a growth season. I'm feeding my brain on purpose. I'm listening to more podcasts. I'm reading more, self-help books or like intentional books. The stuff that I'm watching online and stuff like that is just a way more intentional. The other part then is like, is your community. Like, I'm very intentional about the people that I'm going to allow close to me when I feel I'm in a more emotional, heightened emotional state. If they're constantly negative, I can't have them in my inner circle, full stop, but I can't have them around me when I'm going through maybe a period that's a little bit more challenging. And I don't want you to see this as just self-care, it's strategy. Okay, I'm really, really intentional with stuff, because when your nervous system is regulated, you can keep your eyes on the vision instead of getting hijacked by fear or stress. And I've done a podcast just on the nervous system and how that affects your income quite recently. I'm preparing a workshop on it at the moment as well, so hopefully that will help people. But I've also just prepared a little PDF. It's just gone out last week, and that's you'll be able to get that on my Instagram page, or if you're on YouTube and stuff, you'll be able to get that there too. And that's a whole load of little do's and don'ts and things that you can do for free that's going to help regulate your nervous system. The link will actually be in the description in the show notes. So, like, how do you stay inspired when the motivation fades, and what's actually going on there? And I've talked a lot about this in the past. Like, the truth is motivation will go. I do not feel motivated all of the time. And I don't think it's normal to feel motivated all of the time. And, this is why, I use like a 3-question reset for myself. And I ask myself, why did I want this in the first place? What's the cost if I stop now? And what would my future self thank me for doing today? So as said this week, like, there was some stuff going on. I was thinking, like, why did I want this in the first place? And, in my head, I know why I wanted it. And then I thought, like, well, what's the cost if I stop now? And I think, like, but then that means that everything that I've done up until now has been for, like, nothing. And will my future self, thank me for persevering through? And of course, and how do I know that? Well, for me, I've had the luxury of being in this situation so many times. My future self has always thanked me for it. So I also have little inspiration, like rituals, and these are like little non-negotiable moments in my day where I reconnect, like, with my why. So that's reading something inspiring in the morning. I journal every day, and I will always watch something throughout the day online, or like, whether that's on Instagram or YouTube, that gets me fired up. I really do live by that whole accountability of, like, showing up for the room, because what that means is that I show up because I said I would, because the room, whether that's my team, whether that's clients, or my future self is expecting me to. And that's why I always say I do the opposite of what I feel. And I will really pull that card out when I feel that maybe I'm in that valley of despair, and I will just keep repeating to myself, Sharon, do the opposite of what you feel, do the opposite of what you feel. The tough decisions are generally the right ones. So remember, feelings are passengers, commitment is the driver. So some of my biggest wins happened on days I didn't want to show up. And I think that's what's really important, to remember. And the other thing, when I look back over my career and my personal life and everything, like, your biggest breakthrough comes after your biggest breakdown. And when I've had those moments where I felt that it was really challenging to pick myself back up, my biggest breakthrough came shortly afterwards. So if you can just hold on to that belief that the good is around the corner, then that will help you to stop giving up when the road is bumpy. And I want you to remember, it's not about, being superhuman. It's just about being committed. And then what you want to try to do is you want to try to develop the long game mindset. So, when you're in it for the long game, what starts to happen is you stop expecting instant results. We're in a society now, like, where, people are very, very impatient. They expect everything right now. And which makes us, and I've been one of those people, and I'd say I probably still am, but I've had to train myself to, there's a coach I have, and she often refers to let things marinate. So I think about, like, letting things marinate, and that helps me to be more patient and to stop expecting instant result. In my head, I say, if I keep doing all the little things right, eventually I will get to where I want to get. And we overestimate what we can achieve in the short term, but underestimate what we can achieve in the long term. So start to try to develop that long game mindset. And then what you'll start to notice over time is you'll start recognizing the compound effect. That the consistent small actions done daily, create this exponential change over time. So what happens is setbacks stop feeling like signs to quit, and they start feeling like, well, I'm actually being redirected. So I've gone off course and I'm getting redirected. And, I've had launches flop. I've had conversations that have gone nowhere. I've deals that have, fallen through. But and at the time, each one felt like in the moment that it was the end. But there were detours to something better. There was always something better that came afterwards. I always say the darkest hour comes just before the dawn. So now what I say to myself, and opposed to thinking, oh, it's the end, I'm feeling really sorry for myself, I think, look, what is this teaching me? What is this teaching me? Because if I can keep going, there's something really good at the end of this. And that's developing the long game mindset. And the final thing that I want people to hear is your dream is worth holding on to. It's not here to tease you. It's here to train you. Like, it's those whispers, like whatever, your vision and your why, the universe wants you to have that. That is destined for you. So don't give up just because you're going through a bumpy patch. You can't out-earn your nervous system. Let me explain why you can't. For years, my actual income was limited by my emotions. I could find myself that I was like, reactive rather than reflective. I wasn't patient. And I kind of forced things, but it's because I was like, my nervous system was dysregulated. I had all the visions, I had all the goals, all the dreams, all the things that, in my head that I wanted. But what was happening was that my body was silently rejecting it. And so what I realized is that my nervous system actually wasn't ready. And the reason that it does this is because our nervous system shifts into survival mode. So it shuts down the part of our brain that is going after our goals, our plan, and our vision. And we almost like self-sabotage. And until it's actually regulated, you'll unconsciously like sabotage yourself. And you're not doing it through laziness or anything like that there. It's actually biology. And if I'm being honest, like I spent years and years just researching the nervous system and learning how I could, regulate myself and I suppose upgrade my biology to be in line with my brain and what my mind wanted and my goals and what I was going after. So fast forward to today, and what I've done is I've put together a guide with all the tips and tricks that I have used over the years that's going to help to get you closer to your reality and the life that you want. So let me introduce you to why your nervous system is blocking your income and how to fix it. So to get your own copy for free, tap the link at the top of the description or in the show notes if you're watching it somewhere else so that you can download it today.